The re-emergence of emigration is sort of a feature of Irish life. One of the things I was interested in my research was to try and get a handle on the impacts on individuals of time spent away. Now, luckily in Ireland, look, maybe a strange word to use here, but because we've had a history of out-migration, Ireland's unusual in that it has a very, very big group of people living here now who have spent a significant time outside of Ireland. So, particularly in the population over the age of 50, this was the group who were very much affected by the migration of the 1950s and also of the 1980s. This group really allow us to sort of try and get a handle on the long-term impacts of emigration and return migration on people. So what myself and a colleague have done is we've compared people in Ireland. This is using the data from the Irish Longitudinal Study on Ageing. So we've compared people who lived outside of Ireland for a significant period of time with people who never left. And one of the things that we're picking up, for example, is higher levels of alcoholism over the lifetime amongst people who lived out of Ireland for a significant period of time. Now, for us, that suggests that living outside of Ireland, the whole experience of emigration, adds a sort of a psychological pressure to people's lives, and it's manifesting itself in the form of alcoholism. Strangely, although we found this for a significant group of people, in particular for all men who had lived away, we also found it for women who had lived abroad for a short period of time. But for Irish women who had lived abroad for a long period of time, they actually had lower levels of alcohol abuse, which suggests to us that for this group of women from that generation, that actually living in a place like Britain may have been a liberation for them. In some sense, they had a sort of a psychological benefit from migration relative to those who stayed here. The other strand of the research then that we're talking about today is about social isolation. And again, people who have talked to return migrants, this is over years and years, will say that when people come back, they often don't fit in seamlessly again to Ireland. There can be a sense of a sort of a second dislocation. So what we've been doing is that, again, using the data from the Longitudinal Study on Ageing, we've been trying to get a sense of whether or not return migrants in Ireland are a more socially isolated group, and indeed it turns out that they are. If you ask them questions about the extent to which they're close to family, friends, networked into the communities, you actually find greater degrees of social isolation amongst return migrants. So again, there's a sense that the process of leaving your country, and even if you come back, does sort of add a sort of discontinuity and a dislocation in your life.
Well, I was talking about the problem of unemployment in Europe in general, and focusing on the particular problems that may be affecting the Irish economy. And one of the things that it looks like isn't the cause of unemployment in Ireland is employment protection legislation, which has hit countries like Spain particularly hard, where those on temporary contracts are the ones who've tended to become unemployed. In Ireland, what it looks like is that the near collapse of the construction sector has led to a big structural imbalance in the economy, and many people have lost their jobs who'd previously been working for building companies. Now, those are particularly concentrated amongst the young, and the young youth unemployment is a problem right across Europe, especially in Mediterranean countries, but also very much so in Ireland, and that's now being compounded by the fact that there are many more long-term young unemployed people than there were in the past. So there's just a shortage of jobs out there, there's a lack of demand, there's a lack of growth in the economy, and the growth prospects don't look that good. There are schemes which the government are trying to put in place that will improve the operation of the labour market, but until such time as there is a substantial increase in demand, it looks like unemployment is going to be a long-term problem.
The Fiscal Advisory Council released a report yesterday on strengthening Ireland's fiscal institutions, and the presentation covers the main messages of that report. So we focus on both designing a set of fiscal rules for Ireland and also designing a permanent fiscal council. So we basically make the case for fiscal rules in terms of national interest, in terms of narrowing the gap between good fiscal policy and the actual fiscal policy that comes out of the political system. And we also look at it from a European perspective, and countries in a monetary union really need to have shared discipline given the spillovers that can exist between their policies. One country's bad fiscal policies can adversely affect others. So there is a case for strong fiscal rules, but the devil is really in the details, and what much of today's presentation is about is how fiscal rules should be designed. We really focus on the importance of flexibility, so flexibility in terms of how the rules respond when the economy goes into recession, and the importance of cyclical adjustments, and the importance of the rules not being overly demanding, really forcing very large primary budget surpluses, so very large reductions in the debt to GDP ratio. And there are ways to design rules so you can avoid those negative outcomes. So it's an argument for rules, but the right kind of rules. The report also focuses on what a fiscal council should look like over the long run. To be effective, it needs to be able to provide sound analysis and also to be perceived as being independent. So we talk about the need for resources and also the need to ensure that the council is perceived as being as independent from the government as possible, and we make various recommendations in terms of what the bill should contain in terms of the proper design of the council.